And welcome to the 10th webinar of the EaP Plus project. And this is a webinar on widening participation and widening fellowships. And I will talk shortly about the EaP Plus project and its activities. The project is a 3-year-long coordination and support action, which is also funded from the Horizon 2020 and is dedicated to the EU Eastern Partnership, Science, Technology and Innovation Cooperation. The project is almost finished. It will end in 1 month. And there were 6 Eastern Partnership countries participating in this project and several EU member states. The objectives of the project were to support EU EaP policy dialogue, to foster interaction between EU EaP researchers and to promote the Horizon 2020 program, and also to enhance the EU EaP research innovation partnership. What we did within the project is we provided the grants for EaP researchers to attend brokerage events and also preparatory meetings for Horizon 2020 calls. And on the project website, EaP Plus, you can view the interviews with those who participated in these grants about their experience. We conducted the information days and supported the NCP network in EaP countries, and you can find the presentations from those events on the project website. We also had meetings with participation of scientific diaspora, and the report about these events is already on the website of the project. And there were webinars. There were 11 webinars on Horizon 2020 and 6 for specific innovation-related topics. We have webinar recordings and webinar presentations on the webinar website. There is one more webinar left, which will be tomorrow, and it will discuss last calls in SWAFs and a little bit the new Horizon Europe program. So if you can, please join us also tomorrow. And I'll also remind you the project website, eipplus.eu. And I'm going to start the first presentation, and it's on widening actions. The presentations was actually developed by Wojciech Adamiak, but he cannot be with us today, so I will use his presentation and present it for you using his notes. And Wojciech is our Polish NCP on spreading excellence and widening participation. He also spent 10 years as a researcher in the Institute of Physical Chemistry. His first experience with Horizon 2020 program was when he submitted individual fellowship proposal. And that was during that time that he learned how different Horizon 2020 projects are from typical research proposals. And the first lesson to learn was that projects we are going to talk about are not research projects, but coordination and support actions, which we'll discuss a bit later. During the presentation, we will talk about the widening concept, which 2 main calls have been announced, and they are twinning and air chairs calls. And in the end of the presentation, we will discuss where to look for further information on widening actions. And first, let's talk about widening in general. As a background, we can say that we can characterize each country by taking into account factors such as population, GDP, and also different number of research publications, citations, or patents. What the European Commission done some time ago it has developed a so-called composite indicator of research excellence. It is basically a number that takes into account the factors shown above, such as population, GDP, publications, citations, and patents. This indicator can describe individual countries, their research excellence, and innovation performance. If we put on the graph the values of this composite indicator for EU countries and associated countries, we will see quite a big difference between its lower and higher values. The European Commission used a division line between low and high performing countries drawn at the 70% of the EU 28 average, and which equals to 33.5. And it is a so-called threshold value. Countries having a composite indicator value below 33.5 are called low research and innovation performing countries or widening countries. Those widening countries are countries where the research excellence must still be developed in order to somehow equalize the level of research excellence across European community. And here on that list you see what widening countries are. They are both member states and also associated countries. The ultimate goal of this whole idea of widening is to spread the excellence across Europe. So if we get back to the graph, it's all about raising the red bars up so that composite indicator would be similar no matter where you go in the EU. Within the widening concept, the European Commission has come up with particular grants, projects and calls. And in 2019 there are two calls, twinning and error chairs. Historically, there was also a teaming call, but it is no longer open in the Horizon 2020. It finished last year. That twinning is about institutional networking, which we will discuss in a few minutes. It's a project where you apply for maximum 900,000 euro and the duration of the project is 3 years. The error chairs is about restructuring your institution. It's about performing structural changes within the institution. Within error chairs project, you apply for maximum 2.5 million euro and the duration of the project is up to 6 years. It is important to note that those calls are only for research institutions and not like in Marie Curie Skłodowska Fellowship, where researcher, the individual, applies for the calls which they prepare. The aim of those two calls is to strengthen this institution in defined field of research. Twinning and error chairs are coordination and support actions. The coordination and support action projects means that you do not apply for money for doing research, though there is an exception which was made this year only, and both in twinning and error chairs, the cost of research is eligible as long as it does not exceed 10% of the project budget. Research meaning consumables and also small equipment. There are some standard activities which applicants state in their twinning and error chairs proposals as activities strengthening their research institution. This is something that Commission expects from you in your proposal, and they include short-term staff exchanges, expert visits, short-term one-site or virtual training, workshops, conferences, organizations of summer schools, dissemination and outreach activities or recruitment in error chairs, and also salaries in error chairs. All events like this where researchers and people who work in their administration or project management departments can learn how to do their job better. In case of archers, there are also costs of recruitment and salaries as I presented above. And we will start with talking about twinning now. And twinning is about institutional networking with so-called internationally leading counterparts or partners. You basically need to form a consortium, and within this consortium, your institution is a coordinator. Within this consortium, you plan some activities like short-term visits, staff exchange, conferences, and so on. And as a result, your institution will be strengthened in a defined field of research with which your institute is dealing. Speaking about the consortium, you need at least 2 internationally leading institutions from 2 different countries. Countries meaning both member states or associate countries. What is also expected from twinning projects is that the project will raise the research profile of your institution and the research profile of the scientific staff. And also as a result of twinning, your institution will raise in terms of scientific capacity. What is extremely important is to also include into your project early stage researchers as defined in Marie Curie actions. Also, please remember about your administration staff, people who work in your grant departments or project management departments. You have to predict a task or a work package dedicated to improvement of skills of these groups of people within your institution. Also, it is very important to describe in your proposal a so-called expected impact. You have your project, you know what you want to do, you want to strengthen your institution, you have your consortium, but please remember that your project must have an impact. The European Commission expects your project to have particular impacts, and those are increased research excellence of the widening institution, enhanced visibility, improved ability to compete in national as well as international research funding. You need to quantify the positive effects in the coordinating institution. And how will the leading scientific institutions support widening beneficiary? You have to access you will have access to new research facilities, for example, creative approach to new developments, increased mobility of your scientists, or you can expect benefits to the internationally leading institutions. There are also some novelties of the Horizon 2020 twinning call, and they focus on research management and administration skills. In the work program, you can read that proposals should indicate specific measure and aimed at capacitating the widening beneficiary coordinator in proposal preparation or project management, management of research teams, administration skills. And you have to prepare a dedicated work package or task which will indicate the above measures. And here are very concrete numbers that you must be aware of. The twinning call is opening July 24, and the deadline for submission is 14th of November 2019. What you need for your consortium is to have one institution located in Widening country as a coordinator, a minimum of 2 additional partners other than country of the coordinator. The budget could be up to 900,000 euro. About the consortium, there is maybe an example which would be good. You can have a coordinator institution, for example, in Georgia, and then one partner from, let's say, Poland and one from Germany, and then you may add as many partners as you want. And as we indicated, the budget is 900,000 euro and the duration up to 3 years. The total budget of the twinning call is 69 million, and the eligible activities are those which were mentioned above. Let's now talk about Air-Chairs projects. Those projects are much bigger in terms of budget. They are much longer than the twinning, and they are also about strengthening your institution. But in Air-Chairs, you do not form consortium, you do not learn from partners. In Air-Chairs, you bring excellence to your institutions, meaning you hire, you attract people to your institutions, and those people are supposed to be within a new department, a new research group, within a new administration unit, or subunit within your institution. And the fact that those new people, new researchers, will be working within a new entity is all in all contributes to changes in structural change within your institution. And the structural change is a keyword for the Air-Chairs. So when thinking about Air-Chairs, please keep in mind a structural change, basically getting new people into your institution. Any scientific domain is eligible, but it should be related to the expertise of the Air-Chairs that will be recruited. And again, in the call documents, you will read about the expected impact of your project. It is about institutional changes, structural changes, which we talked about. It's about increased attractiveness of your institution, increased research excellence of the institution, and improved capability to compete successfully for internationally competitive research funding. There are small novelties in terms of Air-Chairs. You have to also focus on your administration staff. You need to include into proposals any activities which are oriented towards improvement of the skills of your administration staff when it comes to proposal preparation and project management. You must dedicate either work package or task for such activities. And the Air-Chairs call will open July 24th. The deadline is also November 14th. You can plan up to 2.5 million euro for the project, and the duration of the project could be up to 6 years. Also, money for research are eligible as long as they do not exceed 10% of project budget. And of course, further information and the most important document you have to read is a work program. It was updated in July 2019, so please print this document and study this document carefully. And if you have some questions, first please contact your national contact points, and the list of all the people helping your countries are on the EU web pages or on your national web pages. We would also like to draw your attention to the EC project NCP WideNet EU. It's a project about widening calls, twinning, archers, and teaming. On the web pages of this project, you can find free online available documents, guides, some useful webinars, and also some other information. There is also a statistical tool with which you can access any statistics about previous widening calls. You can also subscribe to the project bulletin, which includes articles on, for example, proposal writing tips. And if you have further questions, you can, of course, contact Wojciech, Adamek, or your widening NCPs in your country, or our widening NCP in Poland. And from my side and from Wojtek, I'm wishing you good luck with your work, and I will pass the word to our next presenter, who is Magdalena Chomicka, who will talk about widening fellowships. So please wait a moment as we switch the presentation.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Olga, for the short introduction. I will continue the presentation on widening, and we'll focus on widening fellowships. My name is Magdalena Chomicka, and I'm the NCP for Marii Skłodowska-Curie actions. You might be wondering, why are we starting with Marii Skłodowska-Curie actions? It is because there would be no widening fellowships without these actions. So we'll start with a short introduction to MSCA, which is the abbreviation for Marii Skłodowska-Curie actions. Then I will focus on individual fellowships, as this is the real basis for widening fellowships. Then I'll tell you how the widening fellowship work. And at the very end, I'll show you some statistics from the previous call, so from the call 2018. The overall objective of Marii Skłodowska-Curie actions is to ensure the development and the dynamic use of Europe's intellectual potential in order to generate new skills, knowledge, and innovation, and in order to be competitive in the world. The intermediate goals are first to promote the attractive working and employment conditions, and this is basically done by the European Charter for Researchers and Code of Conduct for the recruitment of researchers, which is the basis for recruitment and working conditions. Then the development of innovative training schemes, because these projects are not only research projects, but they are research and training projects. In which the researchers have to first do the training through research, but as well training in complementary skills that would enhance their skills as researchers. The next goal is to enhance the cooperation between academia and non-academia, so between those two sectors, academic and non-academic, and this is done by the secondments and joint research activities. And the very last, but also very important one, is the dissemination of research results and the communication of science. So the emphasis is put on publications, but also in the engagement in communication in outreach activities, as well as the promotion of the research profession. As for the key features of these actions, so what can be funded, who can get support, and where the actions can be carried out. As for what, all domains of research and innovations can be considered in these actions due to the so-called bottom approach. So there are no predefined priorities by the European Commission. It's always up to the researcher or the institution to decide on the content of the project. And as what, again, these are not purely research projects, but these are research and training project with also a big emphasis on transfer of knowledge. As for who can participate in these actions, researchers of any nationality, and there are two categories of researchers, early stage and experienced, and I'll explain the difference later on. And in the RISE actions, it's not only researchers that can participate, it can be also managers, research managers, and administrative and technical staff who are supporting research in the action. Where can you carry out the project? First, in both academic and non-academic organizations, as the cooperation between these two sectors is essential in these actions. As for countries, you can do them basically in everywhere with some specific ideas where exactly, and it can be done in member states, associated countries, so the countries that have signed the association agreement with Horizon 2020, and the so-called third countries, so all the countries that do not fit in the first two categories. What is important that there is an eligibility criterion, which is international mobility, which means that you can basically you cannot do your research in the country where you currently reside. You have to move abroad to carry out the actions. So let's focus on the institution right now. We know already that these actions do support the cooperation between academic and non-academic sector. And just to give you some hints how these sectors are defined. So first, academic, and to these sectors, there are public and private higher education institutions that are able to award academic degrees, as well as public or private non-profit research organizations and international European interest organizations. And to the academic sector belong all the other entities and institutions that do not fit into the first one. It can be companies, both big and small and medium enterprises, NGOs, foundations, bank, hospitals, museums, so all the other institutions that are also interested in doing research or that are interested in the knowledge transfer between academia and these entities. And when we are already in the project, we can have two roles. We can be either the beneficiary or the partner organization. And the difference is the following. First, the beneficiaries, they do sign the grant agreement with the European Commission, so the agreement in which and there is stipulated how the project should be carried out. And they're also, because of that, they also receive the funding immediately to their accounts. They're responsible for executing project activities, both research and training actions, and they usually employ the researchers. If not beneficiaries, the entities can participate as partner organizations who do not sign the grant agreement with the European Commission. They have to sign some partnership agreement with the beneficiaries and with the whole consortium. They're, of course, involved in the training and secondments, so they organize the training and second. They can receive secondees from the beneficiaries, so researchers who temporarily do some part of their work in those partner organizations or do some longer trainings. And as for the cost, they do not receive their budget immediately, but their cost can be financed by the budget of the beneficiaries. As for researchers, I've already mentioned that there are two types of researchers of any nationality who should be employed by the host organizations. And they're first early stage researchers. So let's say the young researchers, but taking into consideration their scientific age. And they cannot have more than 4 years of research experience, so they have to have less than 4 years of research experience and no PhD degree. So both of these conditions have to be fulfilled. And as for experienced researchers, they have to have more than 4 years of research experience or to have the PhD degree. And this 4 years research experience is calculated from the point when researchers are entitled to embark on a PhD program. What actions do we have in Maria Skłodowska-Curie? There are 5 actions. 4 of them are research and training actions. And the 5th European Researchers' Night is like coordination and support actions, which focuses on the promotion of science, on scientific results, and the promotion of the profession of scientists. That's the additional action, but the main actions are so-called ITN, so Innovative Training Networks for early stage researchers, individual fellowships for experienced researchers, RISE, so Research and Innovation Staff Exchange, and there are exchanges between academia and non-academia and between different countries in Europe and outside. And we also have co-fund programs, and they are supporting regional, national, and international fellowship programs. We will focus today on individual fellowships, as these are the basis for widening fellowships. And at the end, just to show you some deadlines, we have still some calls from 2019. And you can still apply to individual fellowships with the deadline of September 11th, and to the co-fund projects, and this is September 26th. As for the next year calls, we have ITN's deadlines in January, RISE in April, and 2 deadlines again in September 2020. As for the calls, there's, as you can see, each year there is 1 call per 1 action. And there is this so-called single entry point, which is called Funding and Tender Opportunities Portal, which has recently substituted the participant portal. So again, the portal when you can find calls, apply to the calls, and then when you receive the project, you can also manage your project online from that website. And here we have, as for calls, we have 3 evaluation criteria, which is excellence, impact, and implementations. And as you can see, the budget distribution for the whole Horizon 2020 project, so from the years 2014 till 2020, there were 6 billion, over 6 billion euro for these actions, with the main share to the ITN, so to the trainings of early stage researchers. So let's move to individual fellowships, because as Maria Skłodowska-Curie once said, you cannot hope to build a better world without improving the individuals, which actually applies for the whole set of the actions, because even if there are institutions who are taking part in these programs, there are always the researchers that should also benefit from them. And these fellowships are divided into 2 sub actions, so to say. First, European fellowships, where you can apply with European host institution, and global fellowships, where you can apply with any European institution, but you are mandatory. There is a mandatory outgoing phase to the 3rd countries. But since the widening fellowship focus only on widening countries, and these are situated in Europe, we will talk only about European fellowships today. Where can you find the documents? You can find them in the single entry point, as already mentioned. So Funding and Tenders Opportunities portal, you can find there the call, the necessary call documents, as well as the submission system, which is available there already. As for the documents, there are 2 that you have to read definitely, and some additionals. First, this is the work program and the guide for applicants, which are official documents issued by the European Commissions. These are official. And if you want to get some further guidance, you can also take a look at an additional document that was produced in one of the projects, which is called Net for Mobility Plus, and this is the Maria Skłodowska Individual Fellowship Handbook, and then you are guided like step by step through the application. It's really worth using, and I really advise you to take a look at this one. Of course, not to forget about work program and guide for applicants, which are official documents. We have 4 panels in European fellowships. First is the standard European fellowships, where you can apply in 8 scientific areas. And there are, based on these areas, there are 8 ranking lists. Then you also can have, you can apply to Career Restart panel, and this is the multidisciplinary panel for researchers who wish to come back and do the research in Europe after a career break. And this career break might have been a result of personal or professional reasons. And it has to be at least 12 months within the last 18 months prior to the call deadline. For researchers who have spent some time outside of Europe in third countries and who wish to return and reintegrate in Europe, the European Commission foresaw a reintegration panel, again a multidisciplinary panel, where you can apply, of course, in one of the areas, but there is one ranking list. And for researchers who wish to apply with a non-academic host institution instead of an academic one, and there is a society and enterprise panel.
We got the communications and some of you cannot hear. Is there many of you? Can you hear my microphone? We have. So now it's okay. So we will continue with the presentation. Sorry about the interruption, but now it's okay.
Okay, can you hear me now? It should be okay right now. Okay, perfect. I'm only wondering where the voice stopped, but I hope it has not been many slides ago. Okay, so as for money, you might have come across these actions before, so you might know that these are the budgets that are very easy to calculate, because all you have to do is you have to indicate the number of months that you'll spend doing your fellowships, and it will calculate automatically based on the unit costs. We have two types of costs. First group is the researcher unit costs, and it's the living allowance, which is basically the monthly salary, the mobility allowance, which is an extra allowance paid for you because you have moved from one country to another, and the family allowance for those who have a family obligation. So are they married or in an equally valued relationship or have dependent children. Living allowance is marked here on red on purpose because it is the subject to the so-called country coefficient, and based on the country, this money is either deducted or a little bit enhanced. For example, for Poland, if you would like to apply for individual fellowships with a Polish institution, this coefficient is 75.5%. The other group of costs, institutional costs, there are the costs there for research, training, and your networking, as well as the management and indirect costs for the institution. And now, why widening fellowships? We already know something about individual fellowships, which are basis for them. They were introduced as a response to low number of success rates in individual fellowships submitted by experienced researchers with host institutions based in widening countries. And the aims of that were first to minimize the gap between more and less performing countries, to increase their participation in Horizon 2020 projects, as well as to attract the most talented researchers to widening countries. And these all had to be the cause for triggering brain circulations and knowledge exchange. These fellowships are part of Spreading Excellence and Widening Participation work program. They are not part of Maria Skłodowska-Curie work program. With a budget of 18 million euro, with 6 million euro for this year calls, for 2019 call. Olga has already showed you the widening countries, and they are both member state and associated countries. You have them listed here as well as shown in the map. What is important is that in case of these countries, the widening countries refer to the location of the host institutions and not to the nationality of the applicant. What does that mean? For example, if you are a researcher from, let's say, Georgia, and you would like to apply with a host institution in Germany, it's not applicable for you because the host institution is not based in an associated country. But when the same researcher would like to apply with a host institution located, for example, in Poland, in Portugal, then you will be eligible. But again, people coming from countries who are not widening countries, but still would like to apply with a host institution, they're also eligible. How it works? It works like that you do not apply to a separate call, you apply to an individual fellowship EF, so European Fellowship Call, so Maria Skłodowska European Fellowship Call. And you have the possibility to opt out from the widening fellowship call. So basically, if you're applying with a host institution, let's say in Poland, since this is a widening country, you have to mark if you would like to take part in widening fellowships or not. As for the evaluation, there are normal awarding criteria as well as scoring and thresholds that apply to individual fellowships. There is no separate evaluation process. So it's just the process of evaluation that takes place for individual fellowships. And the applications that are scored above the threshold, so they're scored about 70% of the points and are not funded under IF call, will be then transferred to widening fellowships and will be ranked there. We know that we have several ranking lists in the panels. We have standard European fellowships, reintegration, a career restart and society enterprise, but in case of widening fellowships, there will be only one ranking list that will gather the proposals from all the panels. There is only one disadvantage of that widening fellowships, widening fellows will not be considered as Maria Skłodowska-Curie fellows because they are not directly funded through Maria Skłodowska fellowships money. And then you can see the screenshot from the applications in the point 5 in the administrative forms, call-specific questions. There's question number 3. Do you wish to participate in widening fellowships and increase the chances of being funded? You have to mark here yes or no. Well, of course, we do suggest to mark yes, because that increases your chances of being funded. And at the end, some statistics from previous call. There were 773 proposals that were submitted to IF 2018, as you can see them here. 45% opted out from the widening fellowship calls, which gave 5.8% of the overall number. 402 proposals were with a score above 70%, but were not funded due to the budget shortages of IF calls. And when they were transferred to widening fellowships, then 33 additional proposals were funded under this call. And now you can see the distribution of the proposals. The majority of widening fellowships was gained by Portugal. And at the very end, I would like to show you the slide about the Net for Mobility Plus project. I've already mentioned the project when I showed you the additional handbook on the application to IF calls. This is also a project that coordinates and strengthens the cooperation between the NCP, so between the national contact points of Maria Skłodowska-Curie actions all over the world. And how can you benefit from the projects? You can find there on the website the expression of interest, so also the so-called expression of interest of institutions who would like to host individual fellows, as well as practical guides, these handbooks that I've already mentioned. There are also webinars, frequently asked questions blog, as well as success stories. So please visit our website. Do give us likes on Twitter and Facebook, and you will then increase your chances in your application. If you have any further questions regarding to individual fellowships and widening fellowships, you can contact me at the email that you can see right now, as well as you can also contact your national contact point in your country. So thank you for your attention, and really sorry for the technical issues.
If you still have some questions, please write them on the left side of your screen. We will wait a moment if you want to ask us something. The presentations will appear on the EaP Plus project website as soon as possible, and the recording link will also be there. and would like to thank all of you for joining this webinar, for finding time to listen to us. And as And if you are planning to apply to Widening or Widening fellowships, of course, we are wishing you all the best. And stay in touch with us if you would like. And please pass this information to researchers in your countries and to your friends who would like to use such an opportunity. And we got some thank you, so thank you from our side. And as there are no questions, all the best to all of you. And if you can join tomorrow for the next webinar, please do so. Best wishes to all of you from Warsaw, from Poland, and goodbye for today.